This is my unfiltered and unbiased review of the DJI O3 Air unit. Now, DJI did pay me to make a cinematic release trailer for the product and sent me some free air units, but they did not ask me to make this video. So this is my real life experience of using the DJI O3 Air unit, and these are all my own thoughts. Now, there are a ton of videos out there talking about the specs of the DJI O3 Air unit, including my own cinematic release trailer. We know it can record 4K 60 internally, it has rock steady, you can use gyro flow, it claims up to 10 kilometers of distance. It's essentially an Avata camera strapped into a build it or do it yourself drone. So if you get nothing else out of this video, that's what I want you to remember. The DJI O3 Air unit is the Avata camera for a do-it-yourself FPV drone. So what I want to talk about in this video are my real life pros and cons of what it's actually like to use the DJI O3 Air unit on an everyday basis. Now, I mounted the DJI O3 Air unit onto these two FPV drones. So this is the Gep RC Cinelog 25 and this is the iFlight Nazgul Evoke F5. Now, I don't have the technical know-how to install air units and things like that. So I had two of my friends who are really into FPV customization and building help me out. I'll link both of their Instagrams in the description below. They're both fantastic FPV pilots. So this video is going to be talking about my experience based on using the DJI O3 Air unit in both of these FPV drones. Now, my favorite thing about the DJI O3 Air unit might have nothing to do with the air unit itself. The new air unit is compatible with the Goggles 2 and the DJI FPV controller V2. Now, this saves a ton of space, like literally a ton of space. You basically go from, actually, let me just show you. So in the goggles department, you basically go from this to this, which is essentially half the size. And the controller department, you go from this massive V1 controller to this V2 controller, which is literally also again half the size. So you save so much space in your backpack, which is absolutely ideal for travel creators. Now, I just want to sidetrack to the goggles a little bit for a quick second. I absolutely love the side touchpad, which I didn't think I would. And I think overall the goggles run really smoothly. But overall, when we're talking about fit and comfort and the field of view based on just how my face and my eyes are, and this will obviously vary from person to person, I actually prefer the comfort level of the V2 goggles. So when traveling, I'm going to be taking the Goggles 2 with me just because of that size and that space reduction that we talked about earlier. But for professional shoots, I'm still going to be using the V2 goggles. Now, it's important to note that all of the extended and the improved connectivity and the signal strength is all on board the air unit, so on your actual drone. So it actually doesn't matter which goggles you use, whether that's the V2s or the Goggle 2s, you're still gonna get the benefit of the new O3 Air unit, and I've confirmed this with DJI. Now, I also know a lot of people are gonna ask about the compatibility of the V1 FPV controller, so the big black one. As far as DJI has communicated to me so far, there are no plans to ever make that controller compatible, and I know it's gonna be a bummer for a lot of people. Me personally, I loved that controller. I learned FPV on it. I used it for all of my FPV drones, but after a ton of flights on this guy, the V2 controller, I've pretty much gotten used to it and it feels the same. And overall, I'm pretty thankful for the size reduction. Also, this is like the tiniest and like the dumbest thing, but I love it. So like they added, I don't know if you guys can see that, they added like this little like slit over here. So basically the wire just clips into the battery now in the V2 controller. And I've always been paranoid about the battery just like falling off while you're flying. It's never happened to me, but I know a ton of people that have lost FPV drones just because of that. And also you can use the same wire for the same batteries that come with the V2 goggles. Just know that long term, you'll probably end up breaking this like little clip thing over here just because there's no slit in the original FPV battery, so like there's no slot for it over here. So eventually you'll probably break that clip, but the battery does work perfectly fine. I've tested it, I've flown it long ranges and it's worked no problem. Okay, so let's talk about the goggles feed next, because I think this is an absolutely unbelievable addition to the DJI O3 Air unit. So now you have a 1080p direct feed to the goggles, and basically all of these videos of the goggles that you're seeing on screen right now is literally what I see when I'm flying, and the level of detail is absolutely unbelievable. You see like every single branch, every single detail in the landscape when you're flying, and it's literally so clear, which I honestly wasn't expecting. I flew this O3 Air unit back to back with my ProTech 35, which is still using the Cadex Vista, and I was absolutely blown away by how big the difference is. I also had a couple of other FPV pilots test this, and they said the exact same thing. I also flew an Avata back to back with the new O3 Air unit, and I can confirm that the in-feed image in your goggles is literally identical to what the Avata sees. Honestly, I know it's 1080p, but it pretty much looks like the 4K output that you look at whenever you're done recording from the O3 Air unit. So the image quality is actually unbelievable, and I personally really enjoyed that quality of life improvement. If you're okay with a 30 millisecond latency and you're not using this Air unit to like race or anything, you're gonna have absolutely no issues, and the quality upgrade is well worth it. The DJI O3 Air unit and the V2 controller still work with Betaflight, so you have the exact same level of customizability that you did before. Same with your OSD, you can add any custom information that you want to add just like you could before. Even though you're running on the DJI goggle software, you just go into Betaflight and you pop in whatever you want. Also, the DJI O3 Air unit, unlike the Avata, is not geo-fenced, is not geo-logged, so you still have the exact same level of freedom and customizability that you did with the previous generation Air units and the Cadex Vista. Next up, let's talk about range and the signal improvement. Now, when I was using the old Air unit and the Cadex Vistas, I've never experienced any kind of signal loss or interference or anything like that. You just have to understand the limits of your quad. And similarly with the DJI O3 Air unit, I experienced fantastic signal strength and improved ranges. However, I did have one small disconnect.
Shit. I lost connection.
Huh?
I lost connection.
Now, I'm gonna have the footage playing in the background of how that flight started all the way up until the point where I lost signal, but I've shown this video to a ton of other FPV pilots, and in hindsight, the disconnect was pretty much my fault. I ended up just going way too far and flying way too low, and I just basically put too much interference between myself and the drone. So basically, you just have to be aware of how far you're going and what you're putting in between yourself, because I did fly this drone all over Iceland using the DJI O3 Air unit, where I went massive distances. I dove waterfalls, I flew over glaciers, I flew over mountains, and I never experienced any kind of signal loss or interruption, and I would consistently have really good signal. So basically, you can go really far, just don't put any major obstacle or any major barrier in between yourself, and you can experience really good signal and that improved OcuSync 3 connectivity and reliability from the DJI O3 Air unit. Since then, I've also upgraded to the public firmware, so I was using the beta firmware when this disconnect happened, and since then I've actually experienced even better signal strength and distances while flying with the DJI O3 Air unit. Now, what don't I like about this camera, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but it's actually too wide. So let me explain what I mean by this. So if you're planning to use this as your main recording camera, it might be impossible for some drones, and here's what I mean by that. So for the Nazgul Evoke F5, I used to have like these two pieces here on the frame, which I actually had to clip off using a nail cutter because they were coming in frame for the camera, and it would have been impossible for me to film that cinematic trailer unless I clipped those off. So when you come to a drone like the Cinelog 25, for example, where the camera sits so far back in the frame, it's pretty much impossible to not have these two prop guards up here in frame if you're recording with the O3 Air unit. So on this drone, it's literally impossible to use the O3 Air unit as the main camera, which is why I still have a GoPro Hero 10 Bones mounted on top, which I'm still using as my main camera, but I put the O3 Air unit in here so I can use the same goggles and the same controllers across all of my drones. So you really have to understand how your frame is built and how far back the camera sits if you're planning to use this as your main recording device, just because of that super 155-degree field of view on the O3 Air unit. The second thing I don't like is that there's also no mounting screws on the drone. So if you take a look right here, the Air unit, so hopefully you can see over there, the Air unit is kind of just sitting in there on the drone. It's just super snug, so that's the reason why it's not moving, and it really fits into place. But you have to keep that in mind when you're thinking about your builds and how you're going to install the O3 Air unit. I've seen a lot of people use double-sided tape or just getting it to fit really well. Similarly, on my Cinelog 25, it's kind of just hanging around in there. There's no mounting screws. It's just the fact that it's super snug, so it's not going to go anywhere. I'm not worried about it, but it's just something to keep in mind if you're going to be installing this yourself. So the million-dollar question: do you need to upgrade to the O3 Air unit? In my opinion, you don't need to upgrade, but I think you would definitely be missing out. I think the range extension, the reduction in the amount of gear and the size of the gear that you have to carry to run the O3 Air unit, and that basically 4K in-feed video quality that you're getting when you're flying makes it more than worth it. And that's it for this video, guys. So hopefully you guys learned something. I haven't made any long form content in a while, but if you guys have any questions about the DJI O3 Air unit, I've been using it for over a month now, so feel free to drop a comment or send me a DM on Instagram. I usually reply pretty quickly as long as I see it. But that's it for this video. I'll see you guys in the next one, and until then, keep creating.